Transmigrated as a disabled protagonist, how should I continue the script? Chapter 11, Slaying the Evil Entity. This is an ancient swordsmithing technique, with not a hint of modern technology. Its sharpness isn't particularly great. Why don't you sell it to me? I'm willing to offer a high price to keep it in my collection. In Yokohama, any shop daring to openly deal with weapon crafting, whether cold weapons or otherwise, often has some connection to the underworld. The shopkeeper seemed to offer friendly advice, but in reality, he was avoiding certain questions, such as whether this ancient craftsmanship was rare or what kind of materials were used. Without any particular context, after listening to a piece of nonsense from him, Tezuka Osamu rummaged through his pocket, wallet, paperclip, phone, the complete suicide, yet couldn't find a single tool to threaten someone with. So, he pulled out Yakimaru's left arm, and with a clang, the white light of a blade appeared. He placed the sword embedded in Yakimaru's left forearm against the other party's neck. This sincerity should be enough, right? The owner was startled in fear. Wait, I'm willing to exchange 10 swords for that sword. I don't want to hear you rambling. Hand over the sword Nakahara Chuya had you repair, Tezuka Osamu, always quick to learn whatever he comes into contact with, and he had learned violence from the port mafia. Recently, amidst the various underground assassinations, he mischievously said, "Take a look at this sword of mine. If I lightly scratch it against your neck, don't you think it might become sharper?" The owner painfully admitted, "Yes, it's extremely sharp, I was wrong." Tezuka Osamu said, "Hurry up, if you're any slower, I might have to pass the bill to your grandson." "I don't have a grandson," the owner exclaimed in surprise. Tezuka Osamu cheerfully explained, "If no grandson, then a granddaughter, just to make handling your funeral more convenient afterward." The owner. He endured, if it weren't for the fact that the young man had such a murderous aura. Throughout the entire process, the tool like Yakimaru maintained an unchanging posture. Toward the white life flame, he wouldn't raise his hand to kill, but when it came to colors outside of white, well, that would depend on the situation. It was quite clear that the greedy owner of this shop didn't belong to the safe category. Tezuka Osamu used Mori Ogai's money to settle the bill, not a penny more, not a penny less. He hung the newly repaired sword at Yakimaru's waist, nodded his head, and with a bit of a sense of accomplishment from playing the bargain game, said, "There's a feeling of a swordsman fallen in hard times. Next time, how about we visit a kendo dojo and kick down their door?" Yakimaru intently focused on her, the life flame actively moving forward. His artificial left hand slightly curled its finger joints, wanting to take the other person's hand, rather than having his hand held by the other. Tezuka Osamu suddenly dodged and lowered his hand, saying, "How disgusting, two men holding hands. No way." Yakimaru felt the failure of the hand's hold, and a sense of emptiness arose in his heart. "I don't have any experience with love." In the afternoon, not knowing what to do, Tezuka Osamu took Yakimaru wandering around. Whenever there was danger, Yakimaru would pull him away, making it so that the two never met any sense of danger during their stroll. At a gathering place for stray cats, clusters of small life flames gathered on the dark ground. After buying some bread and smoked ham at a snack stall, Tezuka Osamu taught Yakimaru how to feed the cats. The two people, who knew nothing about love, unexpectedly showed a bit of tenderness. In the end, when people are bored, they'll do anything. Compared to dogs, I prefer cats. Tezuka Osamu opened Yakimaru's palm, placed a small piece of bread in it, attracting the cats to come and lick the food. Cats won't cling to you. When it's time to part, they'll do so easily. Even small animals know that no one will stay by your side forever. Humans, on the other hand, are more like dogs, give them a little benefit, and they come running, sniffing around. After they're full, they still hang around, waiting for a second free meal. He tilted his head, glancing at Yakimaru, who was fully focused on feeding the cats. His black hair always covered half his face when he lowered his head, revealing only part of his delicate features. Perhaps hardship grants a unique quality. Yakimaru could never become a typical junior high school student, sitting in a classroom with his head buried in books. Tezuka Osamu placed half of a sausage directly on top of Yakimaru's head. As expected, a particularly bold and plump cat stood up, using its 2 paws to grab the sausage. Yakimaru's expression remained unchanged, his face blocked by the cat's body, making it impossible for him to see the other flames. At the same time, he couldn't see Dororo. As Yakimaru slightly moved his head, the sausage fell to the ground, rolled once, and was quickly snatched up by the cats to be shared. The plump cat that had stood up fluffed up its fur and let out a cry before running over to grab the last scraps. "Is Yakimaru looking for me?" Tezuka Osamu said after his playful act. He peeled the next sausage, shifted Yakimaru's mask upward a little, and fed it to this unusual, stray cat. "What do I look like in Yakimaru's eyes? Is there enough food for Dororo?" Yakimaru made a biting motion, swallowed, but couldn't taste the flavor of the sausage. As repayment for the food. This Yakimaru, who had never been treated kindly by anyone other than his adoptive father, squatted on the ground, closed his frightening mask, without any possessions or wealth. He then offered the sword at his waist in front of Tezuka Osamu. "You're giving it to me?" Tezuka Osamu curled his finger and flicked Yakimaru's mask-covered face, reasonably saying, "I paid the money, you give it to me, and then I have to put it back on your right hand? Wouldn't that be a lot of trouble for me?" The cherished sword in Yakimaru's hand wasn't taken, and he quietly faced Tezuka Osamu. "This is all I have." Someone with only 100 yen in their pocket, giving away their entire 100 yen, is entirely different from someone with a bank card and giving away their remaining cash. The sword was the only gift Yakimaru could offer. Tezuka Osamu's eyes reflected the image of the sword, and he realized how precious it was to Yakimaru. In a barely audible voice, he said, "I don't need your gratitude, nor do I think that I helped you. Even without me, Nakahara Chuya would still have returned your left leg to you." In fact, Tezuka Osamu thought that Yakimaru staying in Suribachi Street and being taken in by the sheep would have been better. There would be no need to get involved in the storm of leadership changes within the port mafia. Yakimaru's stubbornness was silent but resolute. However, Tezuka Osamu was equally unyielding, directly picking up a confused stray cat in his hands, blocking Yakimaru's gaze that seemed to pierce through to his soul. The great concealment technique, "You can't see me." Realizing that Dororo was once again blocked, Yakimaru dejectedly gave up, tail down. He wanted to always see Dororo's life flame, not the life flames of small animals. Tezuka Osamu triumphantly stroked the stray cat in his hand, the price being 2 scratches from the cat's claws. Ow! That was the end of it. Tezuka Osamu ate the remaining bits of sausage and bread. Who said he could only eat dog food? When a person gets ruthless, they won't even let cat food go to waste. On the way back, Tezuka Osamu and Yakimaru once again walked along the river, with Tezuka Osamu's usual fascination for gazing at rivers, saying something that could scare an ordinary person. "Yokohama has been shaking a lot recently, many people have died. It's almost like if you look closely, you could see floating corpses." He stuck out his tongue slightly. "Ugh, getting shot and then drowning afterward, that kind of death is too painful. It would be better to just shoot yourself in the temple." He suddenly looked at the afternoon sky, which had darkened a bit, and muttered to himself. Not sure if it's the issue with ability users, but it seems like the Tsurumi River has gained an urban legend. Supposedly, a monster grabs the legs of people passing by the riverbank and pulls them into the water. The dead are often missing internal organs. As soon as he finished speaking, the walking pace of Yakimaru beside Tezuka Osamu slowed down. But he still kept walking, following Tezuka Osamu. At the same time, drag marks appeared in the wet mud along the riverbank, and something stirred in the water. Tezuka Osamu, with a dreamy tone, said, "Do you think it could be a mermaid? Or perhaps a river-dwelling spirit? An evil creature?" Yakimaru's focus shifted from Dororo in front of him to something below. Wet handprints appeared on his legs. Yakimaru, with the power of the demon god radiating from his soul, stood like a bright light in the darkness. The dark red flames of malice on his body flickered weakly, his entire being exuding the tempting scent of food. It was as if the entities were constantly whispering, "Consume this one, devour the immense power hidden within him, and they would become extraordinarily powerful." In this world where demons in hiding and lacking spiritual energy, modern times have drawn malevolent creatures from afar, attracted by death and killing. The newly arrived Kappa in the Tsurumi River, with its blood-red eyes, watched the two walking along the riverbank. The one walking faster was recklessly discussing it, while the one walking slower was practically a delicacy of the human world. If only it could devour the two of them. Devour. The Kappa hid in the murky waters of the Tsurumi River, gathering strength, trying to drag the black-haired young man into the water. However, not only did Yakimaru not fall into the river, but instead, he pulled the Kappa out. It lunged onto the bank. With its frog-like limbs, the Kappa clung to Yakimaru's legs. It has appeared. A cold ripple of joy named the Hunt stirred within Yakimaru's calm heart. In that very moment, Tezuka Osamu turned around, suddenly stepping back 2 paces. The flash of a sword brushed past the corner of his eye, sharp and blinding. Yakimaru drew his sword, his long hair sweeping in an arc, creating a perfect black curve. The killing intent erupted like a spring from icy depths, as he slashed in one swift motion toward the Kappa's legs and the river's surface. The sword aura, something never before seen, seemed to exist in the very air, ferocious and violent, tearing through the invisible enemy. This was no Onmi-yoji technique. Nor was it the ability of some exorcist or spiritual user. The slayer was none other than a young human boy, one who could not see with his eyes, hear with his ears, or speak with his mouth. Tezuka Osamu felt as though he was witnessing something that shattered the conventional world, too mesmerized to even blink. Impossible. The Kappa's scream echoed like ripples exploding across the water, and Tezuka Osamu covered his ears to block the piercing sound. Amid the splashing water, Yakimaru sheathed his sword, his face wet with droplets, while the blade dripped with a strange liquid, clearer than the river water. Slowly, it dripped down. This was the blood of the Kappa slain by Yaki during the night. It died, full of terror. This power, it's not spiritual energy, yet it's more sinister than even the most malicious of monsters. So weak. Yakimaru, having slain his first malevolent creature in 2 months, thought in mild dissatisfaction. In his eyes, there had been no exceptional battle, he merely split the red life flame in 2, and it quickly dissipated into a faint smoke. Tezuka Osamu approached, touching the clear liquid with his fingertips, but the liquid evaporated even faster. In an instant, the Kappa's mangled corpse vanished without a trace. What was that? Tezuka Osamu sniffed his fingers, catching the lingering stench of the river water, instantly disgusted. Ugh, that's gross. No way the Tsurumi River could harbor a mermaid. Yakimaru couldn't detect the stench, and as if completing an ordinary task, he wiped the blood of the malevolent creature off his sword, sheathed it, and the icy killing intent he directed at the creature vanished as well. The puppet stood quiet and obedient, so docile that there was no trace of the greatness of having just slain a monster with a mortal body. Tezuka Osamu dried his fingers, gazing at him with deep meaning. I've realized something. You've killed many, nameless things. Yakimaru, who was always searching for something outside, wasn't seeking out criminals or evildoers, but rather the things that ordinary people couldn't see. These things would often initiate attacks on Yakimaru. Yakimaru never hid his purpose, searching for malevolent creatures and the demon god, to slay them. Over the past 14 years, he sharpened his combat abilities, turning the knowledge in books into survival skills. While he might not be stronger than his original self, he had certainly become at least 3 times more ruthless in his strikes. As he was about to take a few steps forward, he suddenly stopped, bumping into his own leg, feeling that after being tugged, his artificial limb had slightly detached from his body. Not good, I can't walk properly. Yakimaru felt a bit helpless. Without his adoptive father, there was no one to help him adjust his artificial limbs. It fell off. Tezuka Osamu was stunned for a moment, then bent down to help properly reattach the prosthetic limb. Suddenly, he became aware of a serious issue. The face was one thing, but Yakimaru's body was still in its growth phase. His artificial limbs couldn't keep up with his development, which could cause the stitched parts of his body to lose functionality. The artificial spine might eventually prevent him from ever standing up again. No wonder Mori-san hadn't explained the next steps for their cooperation. He was waiting for this realization to dawn on him. He needs money, connections, and influence. Only then can he save Yakimaru. Chapter 11 End.